A long-awaited reunion after more than 2 years apart. Matan Zangauka back in the arms of his mother. Scenes like this were repeated across Israel as the last of the hostages were freed and reunited with their families. A convoy of Red Cross vans carrying the hostages left Gaza earlier on Monday, before the 20 Israelis were transferred to hospitals. There was jubilation in central Tel Aviv as thousands celebrated in Hostage Square. It was a day of politics as well as the personal. US President Donald Trump arrived on the tarmac to a hero-like welcome before heading to the Israeli Knesset, where he spoke for over an hour.
It's a great honor. Thank you. It's our honor and pleasure. Thank you very much. You guys know each other.
This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God. It's the start of a grand concord and lasting harmony for Israel and all the nations of what will soon be a truly magnificent region. I believe that so strongly. This is the historic dawn of a new Middle East.
Trump is now traveling to Sharm El-Sheik in Egypt, where he will meet with world leaders, away from the celebrations in Israel and where the hard questions about future peace will begin to be asked.
In exchange for Hamas freeing the hostages, Israel has released almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. They were greeted by large crowds in Ramallah and the occupied West Bank, where they are reuniting with their families. Celebrations were also held in Khan Yunis in Gaza for returning prisoners. Around 150 of those freed will be deported to third countries. There aren't any details so far about where exactly they will be sent. Mediators Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey and U.S. President Donald Trump have signed a document on the Gaza ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. The signing took place during an international summit hosted by Egypt in the Red Sea resort of Sharm El-Sheik. Earlier, Trump praised Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi for playing a key role in the negotiations between Israel and Hamas. Leaders and officials from more than 24 countries are taking part in the meeting. Karim El-Gawhar is following the summit in Sharm El-Sheik for us. Karim, Donald Trump and the mediators, Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, have signed a document on the Gaza ceasefire deal. What are the key points?
Well, basically, it is a document that is confirming or guaranteeing the first phase of the ceasefire. It's this strange formulation because big part of this agreement was already implemented today through the release of the Israeli hostages and the Palestinian prisoners, and also allowing more aid into the Gaza Strip. Okay. But it's more like a guarantee that the ceasefire is going to be a permanent ceasefire, the end of the war, to give it enough time to open a broader diplomatic initiative where then the other difficult questions like disarming Hamas or like does this lead at the end in the process to a Palestinian state, to give these negotiations that are much more complicated and are ahead of us more time.
Now, Israel is not represented at the summit, neither is Hamas. Have they issued any response or statement regarding today's developments?
Well, with Israel, it was very interesting because, of course, at the beginning, was no talk about Netanyahu coming. Then suddenly, when Trump was in Israel, the idea was spread that he might come with Trump in the airplane to Sharm El-Sheik, to the summit. But there seems to be a lot of resistance from the summit. We heard here, especially from the Turkish President Erdogan, who didn't want to be basically in the same room with Netanyahu. This is also a problem for other Arab states that didn't normalize their relationship with Israel, so that was cancelled. And Hamas was not invited from the beginning, but the interesting thing, Hamas said that they welcome this summit in Sharm El-Sheik. And their main argument is that they hope that this is a guarantee, not only by Trump, but by everyone who is present, the 20 heads of states, prime ministers, kings and everything, crown princes and prime ministers, that this is going to be a permanent ceasefire. That's what seems to be the most important thing Hamas wants to get out of this summit in Sharm El-Sheik.
Now, the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, is also at the summit. He briefly spoke to Donald Trump already. What is his role in all of this?
Well, not very clear. Of course, he might become a role when it is. We're going to talk about the future of the Gaza Strip and who is going to rule the Gaza Strip. Of course, there's first the idea of some kind of internationalization, that there is a, as Trump calls it, a peace council that is going to supervise who is going to rule the Gaza Strip. But then, especially the Arab states and the Palestinians want that this is transferred as quickly as possible to Palestinian technocrats who are running basically the Gaza Strip, and then after that to the Palestinian authorities, of which, of course, Mahmoud Abbas is the head, after it's very vaguely mentioned in this plan, some kind of reform of the PA. So in that sense, Mahmoud Abbas was there kind of representing maybe the future ruling of the Gaza Strip. If not him, because he's very old, maybe at least somebody else from his Fatah movement.
Is the reconstruction of Gaza a topic of discussion at all at the summit?
Well, it's a topic in the sense of what is important in the future, and it's a very important topic for many European countries who already committed to kind of pledge money for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. But that's a little bit of future music. Now it's about getting humanitarian aid in. It's about getting tents in. It's about getting containers in, because in a few weeks, basically winter will start. And it's about removing the enormous amounts of rubble all over the Gaza Strip, with 80% of the buildings damaged or completely destroyed. And only then we can start to talk really about the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip.
Karim El-Gawhar from Sharm El-Sheik, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let's get more analysis. Hans-Jakob Schindler is with me in the studio. He's a Middle East analyst and senior director of the Counter-Extremism Project in Berlin. Welcome back to DW, Hans-Jakob. Now, this is being hailed as a historic day. How do you see it? Is this really a day that's going to go down in history books?
Look, I mean, this is a region that is not overburdened by good news, especially in the last 2 days, and today went well. I think this is a good start. But tomorrow is going to be more difficult than today, and the day after tomorrow is going to be more difficult than tomorrow, because now the easy part is over. The exchanges of hostages is something that even during this last 2 years of the conflict has been really practiced. It was clear how many, against whom, who is going to hand them over. That were all technical questions. Already when we're talking about the future administration of Gaza, there is going to be a whole range of very political questions. So Hamas has already taken over again, of course, control of all the territories that the Israeli army and military had evacuated in its initial withdrawal, because there is simply no other armed force in the Gaza Strip other than Hamas and the Israeli military. Now, are they willing to give up their weapons? According to their leaders, they're not, at least not all of them. Even if they would be willing, who would they hand their weapons to if the Israeli military is not in the Gaza Strip? So there needs to be this international security stabilization force, as it says in the plan, for which we don't have any details yet. How many, what weapons, what modus operandi, how they're going to cooperate with the Israeli military, and are there any guarantees that should the Israeli military again need to intervene in Gaza, that their positions wouldn't be attacked? So there are a whole lot of very, very difficult questions, even at the next stage of the deal, to be discussed and to be agreed on.
Before we talk about that, I want to talk about where Hamas stands right now. After 2 years of war, you say they're already moving back into the pockets that the IDF is now leaving behind. So how strong are they? How much power do they have? What capabilities do they also have that could pose a threat not only to the Israelis, but also, of course, to the Palestinians that are now moving back into what is left of, their hometowns and cities?
Yeah, and in the last 48 hours, we've seen several yet unconfirmed reports of retribution by Hamas against those who opposed it during the last 2 years. The strength of Hamas is a shadow of itself of what it was in October 2023. Of course, it's no longer this organized force that can organize large-scale attacks or even organize military resistance. Hamas is what it used to be 2 decades ago when it started. It is a terrorist group consisting of armed terror cells that can do both harassment attacks against the IDF, defend itself against those militias in the Gaza Strip who may wish to oppose it, and it's the only semi-organized force in the Gaza Strip when the Israeli military leaves. There is never going to be, in life and in politics, there's never a vacuum. You leave, something else moves in, and in the Gaza Strip, unless there's some alternative force making sure that there's security, it is going to be Hamas.
Mm-hmm. All right. That means that the Israeli military and the Israeli government, they really haven't achieved the principal goal of this war, going in and destroying Hamas. Now that the hostages are back in Israel, or at least the ones that are still alive, what incentive does Israel have to stick to the terms of the ceasefire?
Look, I mean, the main incentive is called Donald J. Trump and the US administration, who has, as far as I understand, put significant political pressure on the Israeli government to even accept this fairly general deal. Obviously, it is not in Israel's strategic interest to govern the Gaza Strip forever. This is going to be politically, economically, militarily extremely costly. There are many in the Israeli government and a majority in the Israeli society who do not want to do this. So handing it over to an international force, who incidentally you can blame for things going wrong afterwards, is of course a strategic interest. And that's why I see at least some inherent motivation on the Israeli side. But, of course, ministers Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, who dream about resettling Gaza Strip with Jewish settlements, are absolutely adamantly opposed to the later stages of the deal when it comes to full withdrawal and potentially even a discussion about a future Palestinian state.
Let's talk about Palestinian self-determination. Today in the Knesset, Trump said that Palestinians now have a choice to turn away from terror. Is this as simple as it sounds?
Well, I mean, first of all, remarkably, this was the only time the Palestinians were even mentioned in a very, very long speech that covered everything from ISIS to Russia to B-52 bombers. It is a general offer. The problem is the plan says two things. First of all, Gaza should be administered by an apolitical Palestinian administration, while the security force, the international security force, trains Palestinian policemen. Who is apolitical on the Palestinian side, and what does that even mean? And secondly, a Palestinian discussion about a Palestinian statehood is dependent on a reform of the Palestinian National Authority, which is not outlined in the deal. What does that mean and how long that is going to be taken? And that's why Netanyahu's government did not implode. It's so general and so far in the future that even Ben-Gvir and Smotrich didn't feel the need to leave.
There's so much more to talk about, which is why you will be back here at the top of the next hour. Thank you so much. That was Hans-Jakob Schindler of the Counter-Extremism Project. Well, in exchange for Hamas freeing the Israeli hostages, Israel has released almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Families were reunited in the occupied West Bank and in Gaza. Hamas says more than 150 have been deported to Egypt.
Emotional scenes and a V for victory as buses carrying Palestinians released from Israeli prisons arrived in Ramallah in Israel's occupied West Bank. They're part of a larger group of over 1,900 Palestinians being released as part of the US-brokered hostage prisoner swap deal with Israel. Many of these men are members of the terror organization Hamas, who were seized from Gaza during the war and have been held without charge. Some 250 Palestinians serving prison sentences are also being released. In Gaza, crowds gathered outside Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis to greet the released prisoners, who were embraced by their overjoyed family and friends. My son has been in prison for 2 years. Do you know what 2 years means? May God bring peace to all their hearts, and may they all be comforted and freed soon.
The situation is extremely hard for the young men. No food, no drink, no medical care. They face constant oppression, torment. I wish everyone would pay attention to their situation. May God protect everyone. Thank God. This is an indescribable feeling.
But many of the prisoners say their long-awaited freedom is bittersweet and describe difficult conditions for those still left behind in Israeli captivity.
The joy is incomplete because we left behind our brothers, friends and prisoners in a very difficult situation in terms of health and the way they are being treated. There were beatings and insults. It was difficult in every way. And may God be with our people. In the end, whatever happened to us was nothing compared to what's happening in Gaza.
Israel rejects allegations of systematic abuse within its detention facilities and maintains detainees were treated humanely with adequate food, water, and medical care. For now, a pivotal aspect of the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire deal has brought some relief to both sides, a first step toward a still fragile peace.
A fragile peace that is being discussed at an international summit in Egypt right now. German Chancellor Merz also traveled to Sharm El-Sheik. He said the document signed there heralds a new era of peace and positive cooperation in the region. He expressed hope the same could soon be said about Europe, where Russia's war in Ukraine continues.
When we say all this today, it's also tied to the hope that the US president will now join us in exerting the same influence on the Russian government that he has exerted on the parties in this region. We must not forget, just a few flight hours from here, there's a war that has been going on for 3.5 years.
Our political correspondent Simon Young joins me now from Berlin. Simon, the German Chancellor, they're urging the U.S. president to show a similar engagement in the Russian war against Ukraine as he has in Gaza. How likely is it that his call will be answered?
Yeah, I think that is quite likely, actually, because we know that Donald Trump wants to be seen as the peacemaker president. He's always claiming to have ended several wars, and he's been applauded today, especially in Israel. This is the atmosphere that he enjoys. He's likely to go after more of it, I think. And he's always had his mind on Ukraine as well. He said, of course, that he thought that would be the easy conflict for him to solve. And he admits that it's proved to be a much harder problem. So if he turns his mind again to Ukraine after this, I think Germany will be one of the countries that he can work with. Germany, after all, is the largest European donor of military support to Ukraine. So, I'm not sure if you can really talk about momentum carrying over from the Gaza situation to Ukraine and Russia. Very different problems, of course. But if there's one thing that Donald Trump has, it's self-belief.
Chancellor Merz called the ceasefire historic. Is Germany planning to get involved more actively in ensuring it turns into a lasting peace?
Well, definitely. Germany wants to play a big role. Chancellor Merz has said that Germany will support the plan for peace in Gaza going forward, especially with humanitarian aid and with help to maintain the ceasefire. And that's part of the reason why Chancellor Merz has been at this meeting in Egypt today. I think Germany's already been in close contact with other partners, including the Europeans. Just last Friday, Merz was meeting with Macron of France and Starmer of the UK, talking about Gaza reconstruction. The Foreign Minister, Johann Wadephul, has been in the region, in Egypt, in Qatar, and also in Israel very recently, talking about what's the best way to play a constructive role for Germany. And I think Germany feels that it's got good relations with Israel, but also is accepted by Arab nations as a sort of honest broker, so that they want to play a useful and supporting role in patching things up and a positive development, because, of course, as we've been saying, there's a lot of detail still to be covered.
Yeah, you mentioned the reconstruction of Gaza there, where Germany wants to play a major role. What do we know about the German government's plans in that regard?
Yeah, well, they've already been talking about what they can contribute. Merz has talked about emergency funding of around 29 million euros to go in sort of soon to provide things like medical aid and humanitarian aid to really improve the situation on the ground for people, particularly putting that through the organisations like the World Food Programme and the World Health Organisation. But the Chancellor, of course, also underlining that Germany wants to play this constructive role in the longer term reconstruction of Gaza. And in the past, Germany has provided a lot of support to the Palestinian Authority, and I think that is likely to continue, also encouraging other countries to join in. There's been plans by Egypt and Germany together to organise a reconstruction conference, and as far as Germany directly is concerned, people are talking about 200 million euros of support that Germany might be able to put in. Chancellor Merz says that kind of money will be available, and there will be room for it in the budget. But of course, one of the important things will be to make sure any German aid does not fall into the hands of Hamas and other terrorists.
Political correspondent Simon Young in Berlin, thanks so much.